Hi everyone and welcome back to the studio. James here from Poseidon Miniature Painting. Today we have another awesome painting tutorial for you. Today we are going to be going through how to paint flames and flame effects for your miniatures. We've done this on a salamander model, but you could do it on any model in your collection. Let's get into the video. Hi everyone and welcome to this flames painting tutorial. So we're going to work on his tilt shield here and give him actual flames, and we're going to do a molten blade on the sword. As you can see, we've already done this on the captain, so you can get an idea of what we are looking to achieve at the end. Annoyingly, when I came to edit the video, I did notice one small clip was corrupt, but it's no major problem. So I have base coated the tilt shield and sword in black, and then literally just mapped out a rough area that I would like the flames to be in Mephiston red. So you're not really missing too much here. We're going to jump in with our first colour, and this is where the good stuff starts. So yeah, not to worry about the stage we've missed, it's super simple, literally just base coat in black, and then as you can see with Mephiston red, I've sort of just drawn some squiggly lines essentially down towards the bottom, getting thicker until it's filled in. We're now going to grab our Evil Sun Scarlet as the first highlight colour and basically repeat the process, except we want to leave some of that Mephiston red showing through. So make sure you've got a nice sharp point to your brush. We want to, as we go through each colour, we're going to increasingly get sharper with the tips of those flames to really make them pop. So as you can see, I'm going right to the tip, trying to get a nice thick line so we can highlight inside it, and then I'm dragging it down towards the bottom. Any of that residual paint puddle, if you will, that's going to be left, we want to leave in the bottom area of the shield. So here you can see we're doing exactly the same thing with the molten blade. So the Mephiston red is underneath, and now I'm going to come in with our Evil Sun Scarlet. So rather than sort of go for the sharp point and pull it down the way, I prefer to go for sort of a stipple effect here, because when we go for the different colours, it will give you good points of interest of hot and cold metal, and we can get some really nice bright highlights in there for the hottest part. So stipple down the middle of the blade and just work out towards the edges essentially, sort of fading it into the black areas. Again, I'm just going to repeat the process. We're probably going to do a couple of layers of each colour here just to really get the saturation. Again, make sure you leave some of that Mephiston red underneath. We're now going to move on to our next highlight colour, which is the Wild Rider red. And no surprise, it's going to be the same thing again, except leaving some of each colour showing through, and make sure we're nice and sharp with the tip of the brush to get the sharp tips to those flames. Just a point of note I haven't mentioned as well, I always make sure I thin these paints down quite a lot on the palette, just because we want to get a really sharp tip and we're trying to blend the colours, so we're not looking to get that full saturation in the first pass. I'd rather build it up a few times, let it dry and get a nice smooth finish, and it gives you a softer blend between the transitions of each colour. As you can see here, I'm now starting to think about the shapes I want the final flames to have, so we're putting a little bit more curvature into each of those. We're then going to do the exact same thing on the power sword. I'm going to get into all the recesses. I want these to look like a sort of glowing rune, if you will, at the hottest points of the lava. We're going to also catch that power node, and then we're just going to stipple. We want a little bit of irregularity where the red meets the black. We don't want it to just be a straight line of stipples, so as you can see, there's a little bit up each side, up the middle, just to give it more interest. And then we're going to stipple mainly in the middle area and then reaching out to the bottom and top of the blade, but just sort of go sparingly with this because less is more in terms of creating the effect we're looking for. We don't want to cover too much of that colour underneath, because if we lose the transitions, then we're sort of going to lose the effect we're looking for. It's worth knowing as well, you don't have to do all these colours. If this seems a lot for you to go through all these layers, you could skip a few out and you would still get, you know, reasonably good sort of flame effect. It would still give that molten lava effect on your miniature. But I do think it's worth it if you've got the time, even if it's just for your character models and things like that, you know, for your captains that you want to stand out on the battlefield to spend a little bit more time. And you could always go with 3 colours for like your rank and file troops or something like that. Okay, so we're now going to move on to Troll Slayer Orange. So this is where the transitions are going to start really jumping and it's going to look quite effective. So Troll Slayer Orange, really bright, really strong colour. Doesn't have the best coverage, which is actually quite good for this because we are watering it down on the palette there and using it as a bit more of a glaze. So as you can see, we're going to do very similar. We're not going to go all the way to the tops on each one of these spikes of flame. We're going to kind of pick our points of interest, less is more, put some nice strong highlight lines in and then just glaze it towards the bottom. So what I mean by glaze it is because it's a translucent layer, because it's thinned down so much, it's going to glaze. We're not going to get full coverage and we don't want full coverage, so we're going to start and we're going to pull it down towards the bottom. That little bit of moisture that pools on the brush where you get that little puddle effect, we're going to leave that, drag that towards the bottom, and that's where we lift the brush off the model. So then if we do get that little bit of sort of water staining with the colour, you're not going to notice it because it's going to be in the most saturated area. So again, just make sure we get it into those runes. We want those to glow as almost like the heat from the centre of the sword is coming through that part, so we really want that to glow. It look really cool at the end. And we're just going to stipple this again into a smaller area, keep it nice and thin, and yeah, just have a little bit of fun with it. It doesn't have to be consistent. You can pick out, as you can see I'm doing here, so almost like the flames on an open fire where you get the embers that spit up and things like that. That's what we're looking to do here. So it doesn't all have to be hot in the same area. You want to almost create a little bit of, so it looks like a bit of movement in the fire. If at any point when you're doing this you find you're not happy with the effect, or you've knocked it too far, let's say you've gone too far into the orange and you've sort of killed the transitions, you can always go back in with the next colour down, whether it's, or even go back down to like a Mephiston red or something, really thin it down, water it down, and then just glaze it in. So start in the black and then drag it down, leaving really thin layers of paint until you build up the colour, just to get that glow effect again. So if you've killed it in terms of overrunning the colour, don't panic, it's easily fixed. So next colour we're going to move up to is Uriel Yellow. So now it's going to actually start looking like flames and fire, which is pretty cool. Once it gets to this stage it's quite fun. So we're just going to put straight, quite strong lines now to start establishing where the actual flames are. So as you can see, I'm just taking my time with a sharp brush, and yeah, just dragging and keeping all the brush strokes in the same direction, and just trying to establish that yellow to give sort of the middle of the fire a bit more of a impression of heat. So I'm just going to keep layering this up, guys, with the Uriel yellow, and as you can see, you could definitely stop here now. It's pretty eye-catching on the model, and we've got a real good flame effect going on. If you are still with me at this point, thanks very much for watching the video. I absolutely love making tutorials, and I'm going to be making videos very regularly now for YouTube. So if there's anything you would like to see, just pop us a message and we will try and add it to the list of videos. Also, if you're enjoying the content so far, please like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss out on any new content. So at this point, I'm still just working with the Uriel yellow, just building up the strength of the colour. And I decided to kind of water some down and just flood those runes, just to kind of see how it'll look at the end. Want to get an impression so I can figure out the balances to make sure it's not too yellow. But yeah, I think it's, as you can see, it's going to make it pop once they're sort of glowing as part of the blade. I'm just going to put some little touches as well away, like the hot embers that are moving away from the fire, so we keep the yellow sort of saturated towards the middle of the hot area, but also a couple of little dots and scratches as though it's like embers that are floating away from the fire. Essentially gives, sort of really completes the look to sell it as a hot blade. Okay, next up we are going with Vallejo Ice Yellow. So as you can see, I'm just going to add this to the wet palette, and then I'm going to use a small amount of this mixed in gradually with Uriel Yellow. If we just go straight for the ice, it's a little bit of a strong jump, to be honest, and it can look a little bit too stark. We want to kind of build those nice soft blends. So we're just going to mix in a little bit at a time into a smaller and smaller area of the flame. Again, you could easily stop here if you're more than happy with that. This initially was going to be a new studio army that I was working on myself with the salamanders, and I was planning on doing one shoulder pad on every Space Marine. Unfortunately, I've kind of just been so busy with work that the army hasn't really taken off, and I've now decided to go in a new direction for 11th edition. So there will be videos coming revealing the new army and then some tutorials along, so keep an eye out for those in the future. So this is kind of the final stages now of just refining how you want the blade to look yourself. I'm just going to keep adding a little bit more ice yellow each time into a smaller area because I want the flames to look really sharp and pop. As you can see, we've got some nice shape now, and we're just sort of going like the bottom 20% of each one, and we're just dragging it down into that bottom area. But yeah, they look really strong now, and we've got a good contrast between the black armor above it and the actual glow of the hot fire. At this point as well, it's up to yourself. I keep going now. I'm just jumping between a few colours. So here I'm just using the Troll Slayer orange, super watered down in the glaze, and I'm just sort of going between the area where the main bulk of the yellow tips meets the red, and I'm just glazing that down. So just to soften those transitions, to give it a nice smooth finish. Obviously flames, they don't really jump in contrasting colours. It's quite smooth from the bottom to the top, so I sort of want to replicate that as much as possible. I'm then going to jump straight in. This is pretty much pure ice yellow now, just for the runes, so just watered it down and let the capillary action sort of pick out those details, and then just the power node as well. So this is me again, just pushing the refinement a little bit more. Again, Troll Slayer orange, super watered down, basically glazing over the majority of the flames now. Again, you want this super thin because otherwise you could just turn everything orange. But I'm just trying to soften some of those blends. There's a few, as you can see there, a little bit of a jump between the Uriel yellow into the orange and reds. It's a little bit stark. It's not as smooth as I'd like it to be. At the same time, this is an army piece, so I'm not trying to go crazy on it, but we can glaze this basically all the way from nearly the tip of the sword in the black all the way to the bottom, and just go sparingly. You can always add extra layers, but it really helps bring it all together. While you watch me mess around and refine these flames way more than I need to, just playing around with different colours, just a little reminder, we also have a link in the description for a free basing tutorial. This is for a Mars scheme, super easy, super quick, barely any paints involved. It's mainly pigments and water, and yeah, it's a little bit messy to actually do, but it's great. You can knock out the bases for your entire army really quick. So if you're interested in that free video as a little bonus video, have a look in the description and follow the link there, and we will send it across to you. Okay, I'm finally happy with the glow effect on the blade. It's looking pretty nice now. So this is again another little optional extra that you can do, but it will really sell it as a realistic magma blade essentially. So I've got Cone Red here, and what I'm going to do with this basically is highlight some areas that are almost a little bit cooler, because obviously the brightest colours is where the hottest part is. So the ridge of the sword there, that might not be as hot because it's not quite as close to the centre of the sword. I'm going to just stipple corn red along essentially along the ridge, the edge highlight area there, but all the way down. So we're going through the hottest areas, and it'll just make it sell. This bit is sort of cooling quicker than the rest. So we're just going to build it up. Take your time, nice and easy. You don't want to go crazy with this. Just give it a little bit of a hint, and it's going to read as a little bit cooler. And then we're going to do the same thing again, super sparing with some thin down black, just over the top of the corn red, literally just a little bit here, and a few little areas will sort of sell that effect. So I'm now just going to jump in with some Mechanicus Standard Grey. This is really just for that area of the sword that we've left completely black. So it's sort of a scratchy, rough edge highlight. It's more just to give it a little bit of variation rather than the end just being black. And it's to sell that sort of temperature rather than it all just being black and cold, which it wouldn't be on a red hot blade. Some areas are grey, so they're charred. There's a little bit more heat in there. Just gives it a little bit more point of interest, as you can see, just over the tip of the blade. Takes you 60 seconds to do and looks pretty cool. So we're going to leave the flame effects there for the tilt shield and the sword. I'm just going to take you through now a nice quick way to edge highlight the shield itself. So you could use this. This is a good colour combination to use for highlighting black armour anyway. When you highlight black armour, you can sort of go in two directions. You can go with blues. So as we are here, Dark Reaper, Thunderhawk, Flames Greys, quite good transitions. Or you can go with greys. So you could go like Mechanicus Standard Grey, Dawnstone, Admin Grey, something like that. Depends on the sort of feel, the warm, cold, what you're looking for. I quite like for this to go with the blues. So we're just going in with a Dark Reaper. Use the side of the brush. We've got some nice straight, crisp lines here. So we're just going to create those edge highlights, and then we're going to build it up. We've moved on to Thunderhawk Blue here. Again, we're not going to cover the entirety of the Dark Reaper, just the areas that are highest up where the most light would hit essentially. And we're almost there, our final little detail to do. So we've got Flames Grey here, and we're literally going to use this as a dot highlight. So I'm going to pick out the little rivets on the shield, and we're going to pick out the corners of the panel, so the sharpest edges. This will really make them catch the eye. It'll make that tilt shield absolutely pop. So as you can see, just use the side of the brush, just build it up there on the corners, just to really make it stand out. And there we have it, our flame effects are finished. I hope you've enjoyed this one. This is such a fun video to make and one of the most fun effects to do. I love doing plasmas and glows and flame effects. It's super cool and looks great on your miniature. Thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you on the next one.